everybody. Welcome to the Macabre Podcast universe.
Where we exist to prove people wrong when they say sequels are never better than the originals.
You know, I was just editing a couple of these, and it is funny that you just can't get through the intro.
Oh, really? Not great at reciting things out loud, I guess.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Today we cover Godfather 3.
We cover Godfather Part 3.
And close out the Godfather verse.
Yes. So that's funny you say that. I watched this little YouTube video where it was explaining why Robert Duvall wasn't in this movie, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
And he kept referring to it as like the Godfather universe. And I was like, ew. No, this is not the Godfather universe. It's just
the Godfather.
Series. It's just we don't have to refer to any series as the universe or like the world of Godfather or something. It's like, come on. It takes place in our world.
Yeah.
Come on. But so we're talking Godfather 3, a movie that is pretty openly borderline reviled, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
People think it's about as bad as movies get. Well, I don't know if people have that opinion, but people don't like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my second time seeing the movie.
Okay.
And this was your first.
Yeah.
So compared to the consensus, what was your experience?
It's definitely the other two are definitely better than this one.
Agreed. Yes.
There's no contest.
True.
This one was not... I didn't not enjoy it. I don't know what happened. The story was kind of boring / so bogged down in details that I'm not sure what happened. Therefore, I'm not exactly sure how characters grew.
Sure.
Because the other movies are kind of complicated too.
Very much, especially the second one.
What was going on, essentially, and why it was important.
Yeah.
But I could not tell you what happened in this movie.
Well, it's funny you say that because throughout our podcast, you've talked a lot about how like the details of plots sometimes are hard for you to follow.
Yeah.
And, but that is a common complaint with this movie. So you are not in like, it's not like, oh, Jordan, how could you not follow this plot?
Yeah. There were some things too that just like, some things that didn't work. Not even that they didn't work, they were wrong. Like they were mistakes that it's like, how is this a mistake being made in the third movie?
Well, it is, there's a few things where it's like, had the studio allowed Francis more than 6 weeks to make a script, maybe this would be a better movie.
Yeah. You'd think he'd make a less complicated script in 6 weeks.
Yeah. But maybe it's like he throws everything at the wall and then he doesn't have time to like revise it.
Does not help write this?
I believe Puzo is a writer on this as well.
Okay.
But
one of them's the culprit.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a whole series of reasons why it's not up to the caliber, but I think it's still a really good movie.
I think it looks good.
It looks good.
Looks great.
I mean, there are definitely issues with it, but
there were definite moments of like that were very impactful that we'll get into.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that the movie it's really good. It's still like a great director making a movie. You know, it's not...
I don't know if it's really good.
I think it's really good.
I don't know if I think that, and you're just going to have to accept it.
Well, we're going to dive into it, but it's just its reputation almost... I feel like because it's so reviled, it actually makes it a little easier to like because you're expecting it to be like a train wreck, and it's not a train wreck.
No.
Like, it's still a cohesive movie. For the most part.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I remember the first time I watched it, I liked it, but I was fairly young. I mean, not fairly young, but I was, like, just out of high school, so I was just watching anything and liking pretty much everything. And I was... well, that's not true. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Actually, I was in high school. It doesn't matter. But I liked it, and I didn't know that people didn't like the movie.
Okay.
And then I heard about it and hadn't seen it since. And so I was hoping that I would still like the movie.
Okay.
And I do.
Okay,
I do still like
that's
it.
good.
But, I mean, I definitely have some problems with it. I think problem number one with a bullet, I think you got to have Robert Duvall in this movie.
Yeah.
It stinks that he's not in the
So
movie.
get into why he was not in this.
So, I'll see if I remember the numbers right. But they said Al Pacino, $5 million being Godfather 3. He says, yeah. They say, Bobby Duvall, come on in for $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, come on. And there's this interview where he's like, it seemed like it was a money grab. It seemed like they were just making a third movie to make a third movie. So if they're going to do that, I want a piece of the pie. And I'm not going to get paid 4 times less than Al Pacino when I'm like one of the most important characters.
Yeah.
So he turned down the movie.
That's understandable.
And he has said that he had an interest in being in it, but he also, and he was like, the movie's somewhat okay, but he's like, most people don't like it, and I kind of don't like it either. So I'm glad I wasn't in the movie.
Well, I wonder how much better it would have been with him in it.
Well, apparently it was supposed to be about, which I only saw this on this YouTube video I watched that had like his interview, and then like the YouTuber was talking through it and referring to it as the Godfather universe. But he did say that there was like, I think the original idea was it was supposed to be a falling out between Michael and Tom. And so it'd be like who gets to run the empire.
Oh yeah, I definitely
And that
want to
movie,
see that movie.
like when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's way
that
better.
sounds so good.
Yeah. And seeing
and starting in a place that is simple, no matter how complicated it would have gotten, because it would have.
Yeah.
Still simple. They're against each other. This movie, I don't really know what needs to happen, how Michael needs to change. I'm not really sure what's going on character-wise.
Yeah. Maybe by the end of this, we'll have kind of figured it out. But so for people who don't know, last December, Francis Ford Coppola came out with a re-edit of this movie called The Godfather, Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. And it's like I saw one critic dub it as like a recontextualization of the movie. Okay. This is not like a different story. It's not like that, but it's just edited slightly different. And that person was saying that it was like a pretty, it was very much an upgrade from part 3. And it made some of the stuff that didn't make sense make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And so it made me really interested in watching that. I don't want to watch it like right away because we just watched part 3.
But down the road.
But maybe like next time I go, oh, I want to watch The Godfathers. Instead of watching part 3, I'd get that one and see what it's like. But one of the things that the reviewer said, David Ehrlich is the reviewer, he said that like Sofia Coppola's performance works in the edited version, even though it doesn't work in the theatrical, which is very
find that
interesting.
hard to believe. Unless I mean, if he's saying performance, then he means performance. I could potentially see a world where her character makes more sense.
Yeah, and maybe that would be our take.
I am not sure.
Yeah, well, he referred to her performance as very modern, and he said with this new edit, it makes more sense.
Okay.
And I was like, that's an interesting reading of calling her performance as modern, because it just seemed to me not that way. But kind of criticizing Sophia's performance in this movie is sort of like criticizing Jar Jar Binks in episode 1. It's like, we know. We almost don't even have to talk about it, because it's like, we all know this was a bad decision. But we will talk about it.
Did you hear who was supposed to get it that I just read in this book?
Oh, no.
I'll save it.
Okay. Well, now I want to switch to you. Can I switch?
I'm saving it.
Okay. So, okay, I'll jump into some of this
Michael
stuff.
will never go through the production notes faster than right now.
Well, we'll see. Godfather 2. See, one of the things I love when we cover a series that's all by one director is we get to talk about the director as a whole more than other series. So after he makes Godfather 2, Francis makes Apocalypse Now.
And it almost kills him and everyone else.
Yeah. And if you want to know more, watch the documentary Hearts of Darkness.
I still have not seen it.
Yeah, we need to watch it sometime.
Yeah.
I'd like to watch Apocalypse Now again sometime as well.
Yeah.
And then he starts getting more experimental. And I agree with this as well. Patrick Willems, our hopefully someday friend and guest on the show someday, hopefully. He marks that as like Godfather 2 was like the end of I'm Francis Ford Coppola, I make classic movies. Now, Apocalypse Now and on is like his experimental phase. He dubbed it. So then you have he does Apocalypse Now, and then he does One from the Heart, which is when he goes for broke. And he goes, we have Zoetrope Studios, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new system of making movies. And he self-finances the movie. Zoetrope is like a 4-day work week where actors are under contract. And so you'd be working on multiple films. And then like every Friday, it's a big party. So it was like, we're going to, after Apocalypse was so hard to make, now he's like, I don't want to sit around. I just want to have
fun.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't want to sit around and like wait for the time of day when I can shoot. It's like, I want to just build my own street and do whatever I want and control the lighting and do... He's not interested in realism anymore.
Yeah.
Which I think is very cool.
And understandable.
Totally. So
when
he's
a typhoon rips through your set and destroys everything.
Oh, I forgot about that. And so he's like, this is what we're going to do. And there's this crazy interview where someone's like, what do you, like, if this movie doesn't fail, what will happen to your studio? And he says, it'll be over. That's it.
Doesn't fail?
Or, I mean, if it does fail.
Oh, okay.
He's like, that's it. This is what we're going to do. If this doesn't work, then this is totally failed.
Okay.
So it costs $26 million to make this movie, and it makes $600,000.
Yeah.
So it fails big time. And then he does The Outsiders.
Oh, I don't know if I remembered that.
I always forget that.
Yeah.
He does a movie called Rumblefish, The Cotton Club, which is also written by Mario Puzo, Peggy Sue Got Married, Gardens of Stone, Tucker, The Man in His Dream, and then he makes Godfather 3. That has him caught up. He makes this big swing where he's like, I don't want Hollywood to control my movements, and it doesn't work. So he has to kind of get back into the system. And there's a bit of, you know, it's like you hear Francis talk about Godfather 3, and it seems like he's like, no, we wanted to make this movie, but there does feel like an element of like, he did need a hit.
Yeah.
You know, although Outsiders is a hit, but I mean, that's
but was that like a passion?
The beginning of the 80s.
Okay. Yeah.
Now we're talking 1990s when Godfather 3 comes out. So, you know, he kind of needs something. So he makes Godfather 3. It is the same people that we've been talking about as far as cinematography, all that music and all that stuff. And the movie makes $65 million theatrical on a $54 million budget. I don't know how that breaks down because that doesn't seem like that's a success. That's only like 11 million over the budget, but I feel sometimes these old movies, it's like they just make all their money on cable and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's something like that.
Yeah.
And it comes out on December 25th, 1990.
Christmas movie.
Yeah. So do you want to switch or do you want me now to go through this movie notes?
Go through it.
Okay. So Paramount offered for him to make a third movie after the failure of One from the Heart. And then after, you know, he does make more movies in between, but then he's like, okay, I got to make this movie. So
probably like an open offer.
Pretty much. And him and Puzo were really adamant that they're like, okay, we want to make this movie, sure, but we got to call it The Death of Michael Corleone.
And
Godfather
Studio
Part
says
2.
no.
Yeah, Paramount's like, no way, that's not happening. And then there was a draft written by Dean Reisner back in 1979 where Michael's son Anthony worked for the CIA and the family was involved with a plot to assassinate a Central American dictator. So that was another version of this. And then another funny thing is many people talk about how Sofia Coppola is like nepotism in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And there's certainly an argument for that. but those same people are not complaining when his dad is making the beautiful score and his sister is doing a great job in the movies, all three of them.
Talia.
Talia, yeah. They only complain when it's a performance they don't like. And these movies are about family. Francis Ford Coppola, that is his, like, if you're summing up, as Patrick says in his videos, his career in a word, it's family.
And yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't really stop him because all of the movies you'd mentioned that he'd done leading up to this one, she's in all of those movies.
Yeah.
The interesting thing in this book on her, so the book I'm referencing is the Biographical Dictionary of Film. And what the person, David Thompson, has to say about her is she pretty much is just in things because she was on set. He's not saying that she's untalented, because I'll get into it when I get into it. But, like, you can't not attribute her success to just happening to be on set because of her dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm not arguing against that.
No, I'm just saying for people who are saying those things, it's like, well, this isn't the first movie she was in.
Yeah.
That's his.
Well, and
I don't know. Maybe she sucks in those other movies too. I don't know. I haven't seen them.
But she does a great job as the baby in Godfather 1.
She's in Godfather 2 as well.
Oh, who is she in
She's
that?
on the ship going to Ellis Island.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it is a hard thing, especially because we're artists. You write.
We cast our children who don't exist in things all the time.
But it is this thing where, sometimes you hear about a musician or a writer or something like that, and it's like, man, this person really is doing it, and they came out of nowhere, and then you, like, Wikipedia them, and it's like, their dad was a record producer. And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Man, can you do it on your own if you want to, like, make it to that level or something like that? I don't know.
It's like a little bit of all of those things. It's just interesting hearing, like, yeah, that's happened to me a lot, just hearing about writers who are these big breakout people, and it's like, oh no, they were married to this person. Doesn't mean that what they did wasn't talented, like the book that they wrote wasn't talented or good, but who knows if it would have ever come out if they were married to that person.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is every once in a while you do find out that someone is the son or married to this person and they do kind of have a hard time. Like, a recent example is listen to Joe Hill's Full Throttle, which is a collection of short stories, and he has a very amazing foreword about how he struggled to become a writer, a published author.
Because who is his dad?
Oh, sorry. His dad is Stephen King.
Yeah.
Pretty big effing deal that his dad is Stephen King, and he struggled. A big thing is he did not want to be Joe King. He wanted to be Joe Hill. And I think that's part of it because he wanted the
merits of his own work.
Yeah, which is very admirable. But he got to the point where he was able to publish short stories in major publications like The New Yorker. But he was getting to a point in his life where he's like, maybe I just can't do books.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, he now does books, and he's incredible and, like, one of the best. Well, one of my favorites. But it's just such an interesting... You hear those stories, too. And then it's like, so that's not as discouraging as other ones that I've heard. That's like inspiring.
And it's totally a thing where, like, for me, if it's someone that I like their work, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then when I don't, I'm like, it's a jealousy thing
it's jealousy.
At the end of the day. But I mean, of course, nepotism can be used improperly.
Absolutely. It happens all the time.
Yeah. But I don't think calling... I don't know, putting Francis in that category is something I wouldn't be comfortable doing.
Yeah.
In a negative context
too,
of nepotism.
Because if someone argues back saying, like, yeah, but he made her, like, a lead. And it's like, so having you said his dad do what?
The music.
That's a huge job.
Yeah.
So doesn't mean her being a lead in this movie means that she's higher up.
Yeah.
I mean, she might be higher up on the call sheet.
Yeah.
But he's scoring the whole darn thing.
Yeah.
All 3 times.
It's crazy. And they're amazing scores.
Maybe.
Oh. Really? You don't think the scores of these are good?
The third one, I don't know if I actually don't think it was the actual music, but it was not placed well.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. I think that came down to editing.
I think so too.
Yeah, there does seem, I would say particularly like the end of the movie felt a little bit like they had to turn in a print on time.
Yeah.
Because like the opera scene is really cool, but And I think he does do a pretty good job, but it's also like I'm really confused as a viewer. And there's some weird musical moments where the music changes like, 3 times in a minute kind of a thing.
Yeah, and then there are just several times when two characters are talking about something very important, and I just feel like in the other movies there wouldn't even be music for that because it's supposed to feel really real.
Yeah.
And the music would like fade in and then get loud, and it's like now I feel like I'm kind of watching a soap opera in this scene because of how the music is placed.
Yeah. So I got just a couple more notes, and then it's all you. I just want to say it was nominated. These are all nominations. Doesn't win at the Academy Awards. It's nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Andy Garcia, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Original Song. Doesn't win any of them. And then after this movie came out and it had such a bad reaction, Coppola and Puzo did discuss, or no, Coppola stated that there was an idea for maybe a 4th film.
Okay.
But Puzo died before they were able to write it.
Okay.
And so, to answer your question, he did do the writing on this movie as well. And they had an idea that it would be like a similar narrative to Part 2, where DiCaprio would reprise his role as a younger...
De Niro.
I'm sorry. De Niro would... I've switched something. Reprise his role as a younger Vito, and Leonardo DiCaprio would play a younger Sonny Corleone.
Okay.
And then Garcia as Vincent Corleone during the 1980s running the family business.
That makes sense because Sonny is his dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Andy Garcia has since said that the film was like almost done. Like the script was like almost done. But it didn't happen. And then this movie originally got an NC-17 rating.
Why?
Because the scene where he stabs the guy with his glasses, there's like a blood splatter. Yeah. And I saw the thing. It's just a blood splatter on a mirror.
Did they forget that in the last movie, Pacino, one of them dragged a knife across a man's body?
Yeah, it was De Niro. It was like as violent as that. It just squirted on the mirror, and they gave it an NC-17, so they had to cut that shot. They cut one shot from the movie, funny. And now it's R.
Weird stuff.
And this movie's like, but I mean, yeah, this one's like the least graphic of all of them.
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's all you, Jordan. I want to hear this Sophia thing.
Well, we're gonna start with Andy Garcia. So Andy Garcia plays Vincent in Godfather Part 3. You might know him best from Ocean's 11. And another Ocean's movie.
13. And 12.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Because 12, he's trying to get him. And then 13, he teams up with him to take on Al Pacino. Pretty fun. Oh, I didn't even...
That's cool.
That is cool. And Pacino owns a casino, and he owns a casino. That's very cool. So, Andy Garcia... Interesting things written about him. This David Thompson is a Andy Garcia fan. Okay.
I do like what he says about him. Just as Al Pacino played, so Andy Garcia is from Cuba, from Havana.
Oh.
But immigrated as a kid to Miami. So just as Pacino played Cuban refugee Tony Montana in Scarface, Andy Garcia brought fresh Cuban blood to the flagging Corleones for The Godfather Part 3. So Garcia's Vincent was a ready whip looking for a masterful hand and the most urgent force of ambition in that autumnal and resigned picture. And Garcia is surely the actor best poised to inherit the force position of the Italian generation. I agree with that. I thought he was very well casted.
I think so too, with a small asterisk.
Okay. He is also in movies such as, Pink Panther 2, City Island, For Lover Country, Lake Boat. He is it's interesting. It sounds like he's also in the Untouchables. Yeah, it seems like he has done a lot of Hispanic movies as well throughout his career.
Okay.
Yeah. I know him best from Oceans.
Yeah, me too. I was excited for you to go over him because I was like, where did he come from?
Yeah.
You know, because to me, it's like I know he's in Godfather 3 and Oceans, and I don't really know much outside of that.
Yeah.
That's still kind of what we landed on. It seems like a lot of his other stuff I'm not aware of or haven't seen. So,
yeah.
But so this is, I mean, would we consider this like his breakout? Or did he
feels
say?
Like this guy considers it his breakout. Wait, when did this movie come out?
1990.
I mean, he did stuff leading up to it. But, I mean, that does feel like his big thing. I'll just say that for myself because I don't recognize the other movies.
Okay.
He was in a Ridley Scott movie in 89, Black Rain.
Okay.
I've never heard of that movie.
I've heard of it because I've looked through Ridley Scott's filmography.
Okay. And then Sofia Coppola, like we said, Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. So he has a very interesting take on her as well.
Okay.
As an actress and a director and just as an artist as a whole.
Okay, I can't wait.
So, as you had mentioned a lot of movies that Coppola has done leading up to this one, Sofia was probably in all of them, / most of them that you listed. And then...
Well, might I add, for a lot of our listeners, I would imagine that you would know of Sofia Coppola less of an actress, but you'd have heard of her movies.
Yes.
Which you're going to get into.
Yes.
But she's a director, and that's what she does.
What he says about her is, I don't think we know, and this book is like kind of old to 2021 standards.
Yeah, this came out in like the teens of
something like that.
2000
So
teens.
he says, I don't think we know enough about Sofia Coppola yet, except to say, look how she's developing. They say she acted, but it's more that she was in certain films just because she was on the locations. So it lists a lot of the movies that she's in, which are Coppola movies. She was critically battered. So then Godfather Part 3, she was critically battered for that job, and her father might have thought about the choice more carefully. But it says a lot for Sofia's stoicism that she weathered the storm and pretty much decided that her acting career was over. So then it talks about her going to high school and then going to Cal Arts and then dropping out and then just being a creative person as a whole. She had something on Comedy Central for a little bit.
Really?
And then she started like a clothing line. And then it says there's no doubt that family ties have helped her, for she is nowhere near as articulate, forceful, or ambitious as her father. And he says, or her husband. She was married to Spike Jonze for a time.
Oh, you told me that before we started and I already forgot.
But it says, so I think it's notable that already she has moved from filming a book she liked, The Virgin Suicides, to thinking up a film of her own, Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
Which is a really good movie.
Lost in Translation is like a classic indie movie. Like
it
you
is.
have to watch that one.
So it says the latter, Lost in Translation, is her best work yet, though it's a slight, truly modest work, feeling its way toward a sensibility that is not grasped yet, and which might slip away. Yes, she could be screwed up by too much praise, except that I'm not sure she believes in too much. Marie Antoinette was far too precious and a warning sign that history has been eclipsed by decor, which is an interesting note. I've only seen a little bit of that movie. And I'm just curious. Now I've been wanting to watch the movie for years.
We should watch it.
But with that note, it's like, now I really want to see that movie. Also, Jason Schwartzman's in it. So, which is her cousin.
Yeah, that would be her cousin.
Whoa. Okay, but the person who was first casted as...
So we haven't got to like the thing yet that you've been saving for me, right?
No, it's who was supposed to play. What's the daughter? Mary. So...
Oh, yeah.
She replaced Winona Ryder.
Wow. I cannot see Winona Ryder in this movie.
I can see Winona Ryder in anything. So
I love Winona, but she does not particularly portray an Italian influence to me.
Neither does James Caan.
No. That's true. That's a good hey, that's a great argument. Because I think I would think that
too, but not everyone in this movie is Italian.
Yeah, it's true. But
James Caan is really good.
Oh yeah,
in these movies.
No, that's a great rebuttal. I just cannot picture her in this by any means.
I've never seen her do wrong.
Well, that's another great rebuttal. So maybe that should have happened.
Yeah.
Winona is a treasure.
She is. And she doesn't age.
No. Wow. That is a bombshell.
Yep.
When you said it, though, I was like, oh, I think I did hear that somewhere in the notes. But I
probably did.
I usually don't. When it's
they're not
like
they always can't be true.
Yeah, and when there's a list where it's like these 7 actors were going to be Iron Man or something, it's like, I don't know, do I need to go over every actor that maybe had a meeting with Kevin Feige
at a point.
or like returned as text but was never actually considered? I don't know. Anyway, that's pretty interesting. Should we jump into the movie now?
Yeah.
Well, I guess before we jump in, we've talked about Sophia a little bit. One thing that is kind of detrimental to the movie, I will say, and this sounds like a Jordan complaint, I think you're going to be proud of me, is Pacino's hair.
Oh, I do kind of have an issue with his hair.
It's a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like...
Is it too modern?
It's too This is supposed to take place in 1979. This movie takes place in 1979.
I always forget that it doesn't take place in the time that it comes out.
And first of all, the movie does not feel like it's in the 79
not
at all. It feels like it
feels
takes
like
place
an
in the
80s
90s.
movie. But yeah.
And so 89, I mean, Al Pacino, he's a guy. I mean, he is like one of the guys. And that haircut to me, like, it's like he's bringing Al Pacino into the movie, not Michael Corleone.
It's also funny today knowing how old he looks now while acting in things, and how he looks so different from this character who is supposed to be like pretty old.
Yeah.
That's just funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's no one's fault or anything. But yeah, the hair does not work for me.
The hair doesn't work. I do think he's keyed into the performance.
Oh, yeah,
I think he did a great job, because I was kind of wondering if this would be kind of like a little more of the hoo-ah kind of Al Pacino, where he gets too hammy.
He knows what he's doing.
He's still in the pocket on this one. But I think the hair is kind of a detrimental effect of this movie.
Yeah, it takes you out of the moment.
Yeah. And again, it just feels like it's Al Pacino, not Michael Corleone.
Sure. So this movie starts with him writing a letter to his children, who you learn were basically raised by Kay. And he is being honored by the Catholic Church for his charitable contribution.
Yep.
That much I got. So he's inviting them to the ceremony, and this Catholicism-wise it's just something I've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a real thing, because the movies are grounded in realism. But it felt very weird, didn't it?
Yeah. Like
culturally, I guess it's just, I'm very unfamiliar with it. That there's this big, like, this guy donated so much money, we're going to give him a medal. And it's a church, and it's just like, shouldn't we not draw so much attention?
Yes. So here's what I love about this movie. I will go as far as to say love is, for Michael, this movie, I think it's a really interesting exploration of his character, because, he's gone from deciding to join the family to then running the family and trying to balance the life, trying to get them out of it. And now he's at a point where he's literally trying to buy his redemption.
Okay.
He's trying to buy his way, and he's coming toward the end of his life, and he's seeing what he's done wrong. He's losing his family, like, completely.
Yeah.
And even their business is quote unquote legitimate now.
Yeah.
And he's basically making like sacraments to the Holy Roman Church, paying them so that he can be forgiven.
Yeah. But then it gets confusing.
It does get confusing, but
that's great.
Yeah, and another thing, we talked about in the first movie how it's like this turning point of when gangsters started worrying about drugs.
Okay.
And then in the second movie, it talks about like the political side of the gangsters. And then this movie is talking about the corruption of the Catholic Church.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I'm like, yeah, baby. Yeah. But it does feel like this movie, even though it's very long, it almost feels like there's like 20 minutes we still need to fully understand the story, and I think to develop Andy Garcia's character a little bit better.
Okay.
Which I will get into as we go. I do agree
with that. No, I do agree with that. I think that his character, I really like his character. I think it is well casted.
Uh-huh.
It gets to a point, though, later in the movie where it's like, has he earned this, though? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, that was what was confusing for me, because later in the movie, Michael gives him the family. He becomes the Don.
Yeah.
D-O-N, not D-A-W-N. And the way that's done is kind of like so fast that like I thought he was just trying to get into the family and be in the business, and then he's like, okay. And they're like, hello, Don. Hello, Don. And I was like, whoa, this guy's been hanging out with Michael for like weeks.
Yeah.
And he's now going to be the Corleone.
Yeah, it's weird.
It needed like a couple more scenes, or like him to do something for Michael.
Go to Italy and hiding, and like how what Michael did.
Yeah.
Like I guess there felt like there was no grand gesture. And I guess if you had to say any of them, he did go undercover with the other family for a time.
Yeah, and he did kill that guy Joey.
Who's
so
that?
I think that's his grand gesture.
Oh yeah, but not only that, but so he does that, but it seems like there is the whole Joey thing doesn't make sense to me. But then even when he goes undercover with that other family,
yeah,
it's like when he does that, we lose him for like a good 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, I don't know what he's doing, even though they talk about it, but I don't really know what's going on.
Yep. And see, that's why
there's a lot that happens not on screen.
Yep. And that's why I'm kind of now interested in seeing this other cut, because it's like maybe some of that, maybe even some of the pacing just makes it so it's like, oh, I get it now.
Sure.
Like why he would be the Don. But yeah, so there's this whole celebration. They're celebrating that Michael gave the church $100 million.
I think yes.
Later in the movie, it's more.
Yes, $100 million.
And Jordan and I were like, whoa.
the Las Vegas was good to this family.
And
so like the last two movies, this movie starts with a celebration of some kind, and it's the first act, Yeah. And we meet his children. They're grown up.
Yep.
So if like Kay raised them, but they're now like adults, so they they're deciding if they want a relationship with their father or not. So one of the first things, and we'll probably jump around this whole part a lot, but his son. Michael is trying to make his son a lawyer.
Yeah.
But his son wants to drop out because he's passionate about music.
Yeah.
And Kay is there, and they're still divorced, and they don't like each other. And she is there to like protect her son and his interests. And like basically forces Michael to be okay with it.
Yep.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, and is that when she says that I dread you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Corleone, this whole movie, he is trying in his messed up way. He is trying to like, he's kind of like, it's like he has a list of his family, and he's like, I have to make things right with all these people.
Yeah.
And like with Kay, he's really trying to make things right. I mean, he's not doing enough. You know what I mean? And
a lot of it is like what can he do to make her forgive him? I don't think he can do anything.
Yeah.
Besides, what he did, she resents him for getting an abortion because she felt like he forced her to get an abortion because of the situation she's in.
Yeah.
How can anyone ever forgive someone else for that kind of resentment?
Yeah.
I don't know. But he is trying.
Yeah. So he's trying to reconnect, and like he's struggling. Like even with his son, he doesn't want him to like reject him. He just knows better, you know. But of course, he will let him do the music thing, and he's happy with it later.
And it sounds like Mary is involved in the family business as much as a woman can be.
Yeah.
In this family, but it sounds like that money donated specifically to the Corleone area of Sicily, I think. I don't know, something probably with the churches.
Like a trust fund.
But it sounds like
thing.
she's like involved in that.
Yeah, she's supposed to like head it up. He wants to give it to her and Anthony. But I think Anthony's like, no, I don't want to ever be involved in business with you in any way.
And what's interesting about that moment is it's like, I wonder what Kay has been telling them.
Oh, I know. I love that reading through the lines.
Yeah.
Because like Anthony is completely against Michael.
Yeah. And Mary is like,
she
I feel
worships
like
her father.
Yeah, it's like, this is lost years.
Yes.
I want to be with you.
Yeah. So we have all of that. We also meet Vincent.
So he is the bastard child
Of Sonny.
of Sonny.
Yes.
And that's how he's referred to.
Uh-huh.
So he's illegitimate. He wants to be part of this business, but he's also hot-headed. And he is in the business, but not very high up.
Yeah,
right?
he's
I think
he's under Joey.
Yeah.
Who is the guy from Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
He's under him, and he doesn't feel that Joey is running like New York well.
Yeah.
Because he's like the Don of New York. And so he's even saying that like behind your back, this guy's saying like F you and like F Michael Corleone. And that's a great scene when he's sitting there and he's like trying to make them make peace. And he's like, Michael says, you come to me, what am I supposed to do? Like you hate him, you hate him. And then he says F you behind your back. And then Michael turns to him and he goes, well, he says something like, I couldn't imagine that you'd say something like that because you would know what would happen to you if you were saying something like that. And it's this great moment where the guy's like, oh, of course. But in his mind, he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Michael just laid down the law and I need to straighten up.
Reminds me of the Sopranos episode we just watched.
It does.
Where sometimes it does come down to where these two guys are fighting because one of them didn't accept someone's invitation to get a drink. Obviously, tip of the iceberg about what's really going on.
Yeah.
But it's like, almost feels like children.
Yeah.
Are fighting and daddy has to make a makeup.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Although I'm still with Tony Soprano on that one.
Everyone should be with Tony on that one.
So then Mary is talking to Vinny and
very flirtatious.
Yeah, and I think like to key in on the performance a little bit, it's just like it feels like every line delivery is kind of the same. I think that's what doesn't
feels like
work.
She's acting.
And
not only that, what does not help her performance is it is one of the worst dubbing I have ever heard in a movie.
It really is.
Which is confusing that it's this bad.
Yeah, for
it is
90.
So bad. So it makes her performance feel even worse.
Yeah, because, I think the first, hour of the movie, almost all of her lines are dubbed.
Oh, they're awful.
And then some of the later ones, they're not. And they already are like, oh, this is much better.
But it's like every time she talks, I just can't take it.
Yeah.
Because it sounds so bad.
But then there's this, so throughout the movie, Mary and Vincent fall in love with each other.
Newsflash, they're first cousins.
Yeah.
And we had to, before they even mentioned it, in the movie, we got to a point where it's like, okay, but if that's Sonny's son, she's Michael's daughter.
Well,
they're first cousins. And we were like, are they going to talk about that? Because that's not legal.
And that's not good.
And all they kept saying through the movie was, that's dangerous. But
yeah,
what does that mean?
And there's a point where Kay is talking to Michael and she's like, Mary loves Vincent. But you're not going to let them be together, are you? Is the implication of the statement she's making. And I'm like, Mom, why are you okay with first cousins getting it on?
It's weird because someone saying it's dangerous is it dangerous because of what they're like?
Because
incestual,
yeah. Or are you saying it's dangerous because he's involved in the empire?
Which is probably what they mean.
That's what they mean, I think. And then, but Mary shouldn't be.
But they do at one point say it's just wrong.
Yeah, but it's very much.
But the danger part is superseding that it is just wrong.
Yeah, so when the movie started kind of dealing with this cousin stuff, you kind of were saying to me, what? Wait, this is weird. What is this movie saying? And I said, no, I don't think we're supposed to think that this is okay.
Yeah.
And then as the movie went on, I was like, I guess it never really does say that it's wrong. Not that the movie has to, but it did feel weird. And again, it felt like there was a scene missing or something that made you oh, this is really bad.
And we're just trying to think, did Arrested Development ever make a joke about this movie?
I know. So, yeah, that was strange. And yeah.
So what else happens in the celebration?
Well, Johnny Fontaine shows up. The singer from the first movie.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is interesting. So Talia, Connie, Michael's sister, is she's Mama Corleone. She is the matriarch of the Corleone family. She took that role up in the last movie at the end.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting because leading up to that, her character is, well, one, she was in a terribly abusive relationship in the first movie. And then in the second movie, it's insinuated that she has children, but she's not really a mom. So she's been like shirking those types of responsibilities and been kind of a disgrace to the family is how she was portrayed. And then by the end of that, she is now like, I am Mama Corleone.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it feels like she is more involved than Mama Corleone was. In the first,
she's like pushing Vincent to like get out there and do
way
stuff.
More involved than I think you can tell Michael doesn't really appreciate that. But he does include her in conversations. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think her whole character arc through all three is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And another thing that kind of struck me at the beginning, like when the wedding cake, or not, the celebration cake comes out and we see Kay and stuff like that, it just took me back like a memory to the first movie when Kay and Michael are sitting together at the first time we see them together.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, this is so tragic.
Yeah.
Like their lives have been so tragic, their life together and what they could have had together versus what they got together.
Totally.
And like that just made me
what
feel.
What they do later in the movie with their relationship is like one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't know, I missed it, but I guess there's one line of dialogue that explains like Tom died.
Yeah. So
I didn't hear that.
They say so.
I was listening
his son
for
is a priest who goes to Rome, and I knew it was him because they said so and so Hagen, and I just remembered that it's Tom Hagen.
Oh, so Tom's son was that priest.
Yes. So I think Tom's son is introduced to someone, and his mom as well is introduced, and that's when they mention that he died, or around that time.
Oh, okay.
And his son became a priest, and he goes throughout this movie. He goes to the Vatican, and that's really the only Hagen mention.
Well, and that's another one of those things that you see sometimes with movies and series where like they kill off a character or the way they write them out doesn't really justify the explanation. You know, so like one sentence of dialogue for this character.
Well, they also say that he was the best lawyer. They say something else about him being like a really good lawyer, I guess.
Yeah.
I still know what you're saying though.
But you know, like I can't think of an example, but there are movies where people have pulled that off. You know, even I mean, this is very comedic, but like how Pierce
that's what I was thinking of.
Left Community because Chevy Chase was really hard to work with, and the way they handled that, more so than the way they handled the other characters leaving, that one like really worked, I thought.
I think it's like one of the few times they fully embraced the character leaving because there's a whole episode dedicated to it and he's not even in the episode.
Yeah.
And
where they're reading his will.
Yeah, and it's a really funny episode. When it's so hard to embrace it, it is easier to do the one line.
Yeah, and just say character killed, we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, sometimes that's not pulled off. I don't think it was pulled off for this one.
Yeah.
But again, I want to say right now, I'm like really tracking with the movie and I'm like, okay, I like this a lot. And
so who's the dude with the cane? He is also a Don. He's also in charge. I think he's another family.
Yeah, I think so.
Let me look up the family name.
Okay.
He is Don Altobello. So he is another family because that is who Vincent goes undercover to like infiltrate.
Yeah. But they're in peace together.
They're in peace together right now. But by that part of the movie, I'm just like, when did this guy become bad? I'm just so lost.
Yeah.
But at this point in the beginning of the movie, one, the actor is the campiest actor I've seen in a long time. I don't get it. I don't get if he's good or bad. I can't figure it out. And it's also one of the worst on-screen deaths I've ever seen.
The on-screen death was crazy.
But I just am not sure if he was good or not.
I liked his performance. It was just the death was like, whoa. That was bad. Like, what are we watching The Dark Knight Rises here with that death? Yeah, the death was strange because there's this part where he's eating cannolis at an opera house that Talia Shire gives him. And first of all, if you're gonna poison me, put them in cannolis, baby, and I'll eat them, even if you tell me they're poison. Man, those cannolis looked good, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
And by now, we've probably come back from our trip on the East Coast
with hopefully minimum of 3 cannolis consumed each.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think when we first go there, we might just have to grab like 4 total. And
4?
No,
that would be cool.
Not each, but 4.
No,
and
I know.
We can eat one, and then as we're driving, when we get hungry, we can eat a second one.
Oh gosh, they're just the best.
I mean, honestly, we could just get like a dozen or something and just have them for like several days.
No, they wouldn't last that long.
They wouldn't? Okay.
No.
So
freshness-wise, it wouldn't last.
Okay.
I'm up for getting 2 each, though.
Yeah, I think we'll
and then
have
when
to.
we come back, 2 more.
Yeah. And then on our way out of Boston,
2
when we
more.
go to New York. Yeah.
We're going to get so sick.
Oh, well. They're like, you guys seem really sick. Do you have COVID? No, we had cannolis. So...
Just a shout out, Mike's Pastry specific cannolis.
Yeah, in Boston. So yeah, he eats them, and he's eating them the whole performance, and the way he's eating them to her is also like, okay, buddy, cool it.
Slow down.
And it was also just like kind of strange how they filmed like the binoculars and like that whole.
It was not great. It was just not great.
Yeah. And when he dies, he like puts his head down and he's holding a cannoli, and he puts his head down, and his hand is still holding the cannoli while you can tell that
thing to fall.
The life has gone from him, and then he kind of like drops his arm. It's just very weird.
So bad.
Okay, so so Vincent doesn't want to work with Joey, bites Joey's ear, and then Joey sends guys to attack Vincent in Vincent's house.
So but after he attacks Joey, that's when Michael offers him a job, like hang around with me for a little bit.
Yeah.
End of that. So then Vincent takes home one of the reporters. I thought that was also interesting. There were a ton of reporters, press, at this event, but they were only allowed to stay in a certain area, and there were press kits, and that's like the only questions that they were willing to answer.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But he takes home one of the reporters to his apartment, and 2 guys break in to kill him, and he kills both of them. Pretty brutal.
Yeah, that part was pretty intense, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And the one guy has the girl that he was with.
And he's
starting to cut her, and
throat.
the guy's like, I don't care. Vincent's like, I don't care. She doesn't mean anything to me. And then he shoots the guy that he has, and then the guy who's holding the knife is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then he says, who sent you? The guy says, Joey, and then he shoots him immediately.
Right.
That was great.
Yeah.
Loved that. And then they're working with the church. They're now legitimate.
But why?
Well, because they sold off all the casinos and stuff.
So they sold off all the casinos, but then shortly after that, Michael is meeting with a cardinal, a priest. Yeah. Is it a cardinal?
Well, I don't know. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't really understand how it works, but he's not just a priest at a church. He is like high up, but he's like stationed in New York. This Catholic cardinal priest of some
I think he's like the banker of the Vatican, because later they say the banker went
York,
missing, and then it cuts to him. So I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't understand how the Vatican works. We've been to the Vatican. Doesn't mean
we know how it works.
But it was confusing.
But Michael meets with him, and this guy is like telling him that he needs $600 million. Like he needs
to
help.
Pay off the Vatican.
Which that was confusing to me. I think because this stuff was so big.
Yeah.
And I understand so little of it, how it actually works. It's like the Vatican needs a gangster to bail them out.
Yeah.
The Vatican?
Well, and here's...
That millions of people give their money to?
Yeah.
Millions of people. Potentially billion.
Yeah.
Or more. Go ahead.
Billion's a lot. what I love about this, though, even though it is really confusing, and I can't be like, Jordan, here's exactly how it breaks down.
Yeah.
But what I really love is how, because there's even that line later where he's like, he says something like, I wanted to find the people like that were not corrupt anymore, and the higher I went, it was still just as corrupt. Like when he gets to men of God, they're still corrupt.
He was telling Michael that?
No, I think Michael says that to someone else.
Sorry,
he says
yeah.
a line like that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but that's like the effect of the line. And it's just cool that it feels like it's probably more true than you'd hope. Not like the Catholic Church has like the best track record.
Well, yeah.
But it is just seeing how like corruption and money run everything.
Okay.
And we've seen it in politics in this series, just in the day-to-day in the streets, and then now we're seeing it in like the one place that it should have no part in.
Well, what's interesting about that is if, character-wise, Michael is trying to like absolve himself to like put like he has all this weight on his shoulders of all the things he's done bad.
Yeah.
And he is realizing that he is supposed to help the Catholic Church, and it doesn't seem like it's all above board.
Yeah.
So it's like not even that can absolve him. Like what he has been raised to believe.
Oh yeah.
Like that is the church is untouchable, and he's learned that it's not.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it was executed well.
Yeah. It's I made a joke when we were watching it, and if you've seen The Big Short, you understand this joke where I said, okay, we need a Margot Robbie in a bathtub scene now.
Totally.
Because in The Big Short, if you haven't seen, the movie cuts to certain celebrities throughout the movie, and one of them is Margot Robbie in a bathtub, and she's like, so here's the deal. You don't know what this means, this housing market thing, so I'm going to explain it to you. And she's like looking at the camera.
Yeah. Breaking the fourth wall stuff. So this guy asked Michael to help him. $600 million is what he needs. And I guess Michael's like, sure, but obviously he can't just like straight up give him that money. So the idea is he's going to like take over this Vatican business.
Yeah, they have this company called Immobiliare.
That didn't make sense to me.
Well, and what didn't help is I don't think they ever specified what that company was or did.
That's a big issue. Yeah. Well, if anything, it's probably just some corporation that has its hands in a million different things.
Yeah. So I don't know what it was. It's probably something that like manages hedge funds or something strange that I have no understanding
But basically the way that Michael can help them is by like the Vatican accepts the Corleone family's help.
Yeah.
And because it's not just because it's like this institution, they have to like all agree on it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too big, too high concept. I still don't quite understand it.
And I think that's fine. It's like I agree and disagree with you.
I know.
Because I kind of like all of this stuff. But
I just don't think it was explained or written well.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking of like all the Cuba stuff in part 2 and how I was pretty confused about a lot of that stuff too. But I think what helped in that is there was like Hyman Roth as a character. You were able to attach yourself to him even though you didn't understand maybe what was happening in Cuba.
Yes, and this didn't really have a person.
Yeah.
It was just the Vatican.
I think that Pope maybe comes in a little too late because when he shows up,
that's true.
I was like, who's this guy?
I know. He was good.
He was really good. But this movie is hardest to talk about than the others because I'm already like, wait, did we talk about which meetings? And
let's get to, we're probably skipping a crap ton, but let's get to Michael meeting with all of his guys in that skyscraper.
Yeah. Great scene.
To give them all of the casinos are done, and he gives them all of the last money that they're owed.
Yep. And they're all like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't give Joey a penny.
And why?
Because
he never invested?
I think Joey never owned any of the casinos, and Joey's always been like, I don't know why.
Well, that's the only thing I could think of because he says this is for everyone who's been a shareholder and has invested in one of the casinos. this is what you've earned
Yeah.
over time. So I just have to assume that means Joey never did. However, he was hired to be, as we know, like the face of everything, because he's always like in the spotlight, in the press, doing stuff, like kind of representing the businesses.
Yeah.
But he never owned anything. So he gets shortchanged.
I think that's
what I'm going with.
I mean, half the thing, this is the same thing when I watch Sopranos. And this movie is definitely more complicated than the other two Godfathers. But and same with Goodfellas. I throw Goodfellas in there too, where it's like there's a certain point where the plot, I have to grasp onto like characters and just like, oh, this room was just murdered by all these people. Okay, that guy's like, I kind of have to simplify it and go like bad guy, good guy. Okay.
The issue though is that's such a fine line.
It really is. It really
did not work. It didn't make sense to me. So then, there's a helicopter that flies up to the building and guns everyone down. Besides, Michael makes it out. But who was that?
That was Joey.
So he just was going to do that either way?
I think if he didn't get what he thought he was owed, he was going to do that. And if he did, he was going to radio them and say, don't do it. That's that's the impression I got.
Okay.
And I like this scene, when I was watching the making of, it was just great because they were talking about Francis and they were like, when we were getting ready to do this scene, Francis was like, what if we never see the helicopter? And it's just the suggestion of the helicopter and the sound and the lights and stuff like that. And I was like, cool. That's good filmmaking right there. I love that. Because the whole time you're just in the room, it's just getting machine gunned down. You hear it, but you don't actually see it. And it's like a little bit scarier that way because you don't really know what's happening. It's more chaotic.
Let me be honest. It made so little sense to me that I don't care about what you just said.
Okay.
I don't understand the artistry in it because it was so, and maybe I'm just at a point where the movie's lost me at this point in specifics.
Yeah.
Where, yes, I know this Joey guy is bad. He already tried to kill Vincent. And he's a disgruntled employee. Okay. But he had a helicopter ready at the press of a button to come kill all these people. Yeah. I don't know why. That actually doesn't not make sense based on the other movies. Yeah. Because that's happened in other movies. But it just, I don't know why. But it doesn't work for me. And that for that reason, I'm backing out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great scene, but that's okay. We can disagree on that.
I don't know why. It just is not computing in my brain.
Yeah, that's okay. Text one.
Podcast over.
Text 1 for yes and text 2 for no, and let us know what you think. So that happens.
And I think I'm extra confused about it all because of the Vatican stuff. So you have all the Vatican stuff going on, and then you have this Joey dude going on. So it's two different things that are unrelated. Yeah. And the whole time, too, so it's like, yes, it's confusing. The other movies are kind of confusing. Yeah. Like I'm okay with a level of confusion. But I don't understand what's going on with Michael at this point in the movie.
Well, I'm not disputing you, but what is going on with him, from what I gather, is that he is just trying to like officially end like the illegitimate side of the company and leave and no longer have the gangster crime family. That is what he is trying to do. Okay. And he, on a character, like a deeper level, he's trying to find peace and he's trying to reconnect with his family. Okay. And I think when you grasp onto those ideas, I think the movie is easier to follow. In that regard.
So Joey does represent the gangster side of all of it. Yeah. Because Michael's trying to get out of this in a legitimate way. Uh-huh. And them getting gunned down is proof that he can't. He can never escape it. He can never escape it in his real life, and then he also can't escape it in his morality. Yep. Or his conscience. So that does make sense to me on that level. Yeah. That Joey does represent that.
And I was just thinking, to jump way ahead, but I think what's really cool about the ending of the movie is that he finally accepts his son for who his son is. Mm-hmm. He's with Kay, he's with his daughter, and it's like like when he's watching the opera, it feels like he is truly happy.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
And even in that, Talia is killing someone. And I don't know if Michael ordered that or not. I don't think he did. I think Vincent ordered it.
That's if I know. Okay.
And then even when he is able to like find peace, the sins of his past still catch up to him because then Mary gets killed.
Yeah.
So it's like the whole movie, he's striving to find something. The moment he gets it, he loses it immediately.
Which is an interesting thing for the whole character arc, like that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because when he was introduced to us, he wanted no part in it.
Yeah.
And by the end of his story, he's trying to get out of it.
And another thing that I think is like very telling about the movie is when the last scene of the movie, it shows Michael, he's sitting and he's completely alone. No one else is around him. And then he keels over and dies.
Okay.
So he dies alone. No family. Nothing. He has nothing.
Okay.
And that's why I feel like maybe the edit works a little bit better because I think all those things are in the movie.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is like the execution or like you're like, wait, what did the Catholic Church have to do with But I do think like his character arc I think is pretty strong in this movie.
Yeah, I just think all the complicated stuff muddies it for me.
Yeah.
But talking about it makes sense.
Yeah. But it is just this tragic thing and I like thinking about, they wanted to call this movie The Death of Michael Corleone. But when you see his makeup, the last shot of the movie, it looks like he's way older than the opera scene.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought about that and I thought like the death of Michael Corleone is not his physical death.
Uh-huh.
It's his spiritual and familial death that happens in this movie.
Yeah.
And you don't even need that last scene in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
And it can still be the death of Michael Corleone because he's lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the movie.
That's interesting for sure. So then after this, Vincent is like fuming to get Joey killed, to which Michael is like, no. Like, don't say, he says something similar that Marlon Brando tells Sonny, funny enough, in the first movie, when Sonny speaks out of turn and Marlon Brando says, like, don't ever like reveal your feelings to the rival person. And so at this point,
don't ever speak your mind outside of the family.
Speak your mind. So Vincent, he's speaking his mind within the family, but it is like, no, it's not warranted. And no one's asking him. It's not his choice. Therefore, he needs to keep his mouth shut until he's told to do something.
Yep.
But all he wants to do is do, which is just like Sonny.
Yeah.
And I like that he is similar in his way to his father, and that, and how Michael keeps telling him, "Shut up, no," like screaming at him, "You need to calm down."
Yeah.
And Vincent can hardly handle it.
Yeah.
I like all that stuff. And then, Michael has a diabetic stroke around this time. And is out of commission for a while.
Every time I'm out, they pull me back in.
Yes. And so while he's in the hospital, Connie, Vincent, and another guy, his right-hand man. They all decide without Michael to assassinate Joey.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting, speaking to your point earlier about Connie, she tells Vincent, she's like, you need to take care of this. Like, do it.
Yeah.
She orders the hit.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And it's interesting because it's like, can she do that?
And I think she can't.
Okay.
And so that's why it's interesting, But who's gonna say no?
When all three of them want it.
Yeah. And so then there's the scene which is reminiscent of the Dawn in the 1920s when Vito comes to Italy, who's walking through the street. York. I'm sorry, comes to New York. And Joey is walking through the streets just like that Dawn, and people are saying hey, hey. And then he gets distracted for a while. And again, I like the filming of this scene a lot because we keep cutting to a police officer, and then chaos starts happening, and I was like, why did they cut to this police officer?
I don't think I even thought about that.
Yeah, I was just like, what does he have to do with this? He's got to have something to do with it. And then it cuts to the police officer, and it's actually Vincent on a mounted. He's on a horse, and he guns down Joey, shoots him 3 times, and I was like, "Yeah, that's cool."
Yeah.
And
So he
that
hits
happens.
them. He whacks Joey.
Yeah.
And when Michael finds out about this, he's very unhappy.
Yeah.
Does not agree with their decision. And he basically makes all 3 of them admit that it was wrong. And Connie was like, Talia Shire's acting was so good in that moment.
Yeah.
She was trying so hard not to admit that she understands why it was wrong.
Yeah.
It's just good.
Yeah. And then we have a couple more scenes. Like there's the scene where Mary visits Vincent as he's cooking. And
Noki?
What?
Noki?
Oh, yes. And it's just, I think another detrimental thing to this movie is there is like less than 0% chemistry between Andy Garcia and
there's
Sofia
not
Coppola.
much.
I mean, it is like, because I think Andy does a great performance in the movie, but every scene with her made me question if he was good in the movie. And I'm not, like, it felt very weird because it was like, my line, hello, ha-da-da-da-da, my line, and then his line, hey, this, and the conversations they were not delivered realistically. It was very strange.
And maybe like something that's just not well written in general. And it's interesting because it's like a movie full of men, because that's what the mafia is. It's just full of men.
Yeah.
It's like surprising that Connie has this much of a role within the mafia, but Mary like doesn't do anything. Therefore, it's hard to like go through this with her and understand what she's going through, because in the first movie with Kay, we understand what she's going through. She loves this man. She's fallen in love with this man who she understands has ties to this Italian-American mafia thing, but he has told her that he doesn't want that.
Yeah.
And then he goes against what she said, what she believed he said. Like that whole development's very interesting. But in this movie with Mary, I just like don't know what she wants other than Vincent, which is just like, okay, so she's motivated by a man.
Yeah.
Boring.
Well, I think it's especially boring.
Well, I shouldn't say boring, because basically Kay was in the first one.
Yeah.
But it was a more complex and interesting way.
Yeah.
It didn't just feel like she's making all her decisions based on Michael.
Yeah. But in this movie, I think it doesn't help the movie that at no point as a viewer, you knowing that they're first cousins, are you like, man, I wish they could be together. The whole movie, you're like,
it just feels weird.
You're like, yeah, Michael's right. It's weird that you guys are dating.
So like she wants to be involved in the family, and we get to know enough that she's involved of like this foundation that's been set up, but we don't actually see her do any work.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on.
Right.
But there's like no time.
Right.
But it's just like, I don't really know what I need to think about her. Because like you said, I don't think I really want her to be with Vincent.
I think the movie's unclear with how you should view their relationship. And I think it's unclear on how you should view Mary. And I don't think that was intentional. That it was supposed to be unclear.
Yeah, because there's that part when she is with Vincent and she is talking about, like, she basically asks him, did my father kill Sonny? And he says no. And so it's like, okay, so she's curious about some of these family secrets.
She says, did he kill Fredo?
I thought she said Sonny.
No.
Oh, okay, whatever. But she's curious.
Because Sonny, they all know it was the other gang that shot down Sonny.
That's true. But she's curious about these family secrets. And I just wish there was a little more time spent on her trying to learn more about things that her mother was always lied to. That might have been more interesting.
Oh, that's a great fix, Jordan. Oh,
but I don't know if there's enough time for that.
Yeah. Well, you could maybe cut some of the papal stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's called? The papal?
I don't know.
Anyway. So let's see. So there's a meeting in Sicily. So we're in Sicily for a while.
They also go to Rome at one point, though.
They go to Rome, yeah, and they finally like are able to get the immobiliare deal to go through.
But it doesn't seem to be going well.
Well, it has something to do with the Pope transfer.
The current Pope is like on his deathbed, so they're trying to politically, like, Michael meets with this guy who he wants to be the Pope.
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, and
I don't
I
know.
think there's something, and I didn't read too much when I was researching on this, but I think there's also some confusion because I think some of the Pope stuff is like historical. So I think
Yeah.
that made it extra confusing for some people
Yeah.
because I think that I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about this, but I think when he becomes the Pope, the guy who breaks open the stone,
Yeah.
I think that was like a real person in history
Oh, really?
who died quickly. I think. And maybe I should cut this out of the episode because I don't know. I just started reading that when I was researching the movie, and I was like, I don't have the capacity to like learn the history
This
of
is
the
the
Catholic
interesting
Church.
thing about it. So, us being people who are not very familiar with how the Catholic Vatican Church works,
Yeah.
does that hinder the movie? Because it feels like you need to know more than a basic understanding. And maybe that's how little I do know about it. Maybe this is basic.
Well,
And
it's
I'm just
not because
like,
that's a huge complaint on the movie. So,
oh, cool. Because
yeah.
I do feel like I agree with that. I think it's a pretty big hindrance because you've no idea what's going on.
yeah.
And because a decision gets made and you're like, was that good?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'll have to look that up now. Now I'm curious. I wasn't curious before we watched the movie when I was making the notes because I didn't realize how much it would play into the movie.
That being said, though, that scene with that guy was one of the best scenes in the movie.
Maybe the best.
Yeah.
Talk about it, baby.
So he goes to meet with this guy who eventually becomes the Pope in this movie. And he is meeting with him for those political reasons.
Yeah.
But it ends up becoming very personal. So Michael is kind of talking to him about this stuff, but the guy can tell that he has a heavy heart.
Yeah.
And he says, like, why don't you confess? And Michael's like, I haven't done that in like 30 years. That we got no time. And of course, this guy's like, let's make some time for this. Like, this is more important to you and to me than this whole political business.
Yeah.
Which is great. So he takes him to this area in the courtyard, and I think it's sweet that he is like, this is where many of the other priests confess to me. So it's just very out in the open.
And what's great is they shoot it behind pillars looking into the courtyard when he starts confessing, so it looks very intimate.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're seeing into what's happening instead of like we're with the characters. It's like we shouldn't be hearing this.
Well, like a confessional, like
Great,
it's
smart.
anonymous.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So Michael is telling him that he has killed people. He has ordered people to kill people. He has put people and his family in harm's, like he has done very bad things throughout his life.
Yeah.
And
I betrayed my wife. I betrayed my family. I betrayed my...
all this stuff.
Yeah.
And he becomes emotional fast. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional. I was getting emotional just watching Al Pacino get emotional.
He says he's beyond redemption.
Yeah. And one of the best lines of the whole movie is when the priest or this guy tells him, of course you are forgiven of all these things and you're absolved of them, but you don't believe in it. You don't believe that you can be, therefore you're not going to stop your ways.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
How true is that for so many of us?
Yes.
Where you feel like you can't ever be truly forgiven, whether you believe in God or not, just in general of being forgiven and being able to put something behind you. If you can't believe that you are worthy of that, not even because no one's worthy of it, but it's given to us by the grace of God.
Yeah.
But like, because it is like, because of grace, we are forgiven. But if we can't accept it, how can we stop doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
That's one of the most
amazing,
profound things I've ever heard.
And what's great, what's cool too is in this movie that Pope is like he becomes the Pope.
Yeah.
And it does, like, looking back, I didn't track this while I was watching it, but looking back, it's like, oh, this seems like there's even a moment where a guy says like he's cleaning house.
Yeah.
So he truly like believes in Christ and redemption, and he is like
not this crooked stuff that's going on.
Yeah, he's not in it for the money and stuff from what we see in the movie, and then he's assassinated because he's not following what everyone else is doing.
That point, I was so confused in the movie that I didn't really catch that.
That's a little more like I get it now thinking about the movie.
Got it.
So let's see.
What's interesting is right after that, Michael is talking with Connie about what just happened.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like basically saying what he was told to him, where everything's just gotten more crooked or crookeder is how he said it.
Yeah.
And it just won't stop. And I can't stop it. And he's feeling pretty hopeless about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So they're also in Sicily because his son is in an opera.
Yep.
And it's this big family affair. So Kay comes, but her husband can't come with her. And Michael is, this is her first time here.
Yeah.
Big deal. And Michael wants to show her his Sicily.
Yeah.
And she is like, I'm good. I don't want to spend time with you. I want to spend time with my kids.
She set up great boundaries. Love that
Very
about
healthy.
her.
And so, because she's a big thing it's just interesting through her experience. She's pretty much like, I don't like Italians.
Yeah.
Because of what I've experienced.
Uh-huh.
And it's just interesting complexities.
Absolutely.
About a character.
She's a great character. I love Kay in all three movies.
And she's not even in this movie very much. And she's very good. Like, her character is very strong in all scenes that she's in.
But there's that, he takes her out onto
undercover. He tricks her.
Yeah, into thinking that he's gone, and there's like no bodyguards, and it's this really sweet part of the movie.
Yeah.
And he, is showing her like, oh, my dad grew up over here. This
and then
is
he's in this room where he's looking out the window, and he's like, every morning I woke up here thinking of you. And then she's like, and then he got married.
Yeah, did you wake up with her in this room or something like that?
Yeah.
And so you're like, geez Louise.
Yeah.
And then, he's like, you got to forgive me. And she says like, I always love you and I always will.
It's just that scene is the second best scene in the movie. When they're, like you said, around the table, pretending to eat but not eating because it's just the acting so good with the food too, I think. Where Michael is bearing his soul, where he is like, I was bad. I made mistakes. I pushed people away. And like, how can I ever get you to forgive me? And she is saying, and then like he said too, he's like, I've never stopped loving you. I've always loved you. And she is just crying because I can only imagine that she is like, this is exactly why I didn't want to be with him alone on this trip, because I knew this was going to happen, because I knew that it was going to get me to admit that I've always loved him too. I've never stopped loving him. But they like never got to finish that conversation. Uh-huh. Which is that's the interesting part. Go ahead.
And what's also good about like the nuance of this scene is he says, I want you to forgive me. And so like the movies, which I think they've done a really good job throughout, it's like it's still showcasing like how chauvinistic and like sexist these people are, because he's telling her, I want you to forgive me, not will you forgive me? Would you ever forgive me? Can you please forgive me? He says, I want you to forgive me.
And it's interesting
because
it's
still about him.
Yeah, because prior to that, he was confessing his sins to a priest and doesn't believe that he can be forgiven by God.
Yeah.
But he's asking for forgiveness. So he basically is not asking for forgiveness because he doesn't feel like he deserves it. Uh-huh. But he thinks that he deserves his wife's forgiveness.
Oh, didn't even think about that.
Crazy. So he's trying to get that from her. They are interrupted because meanwhile, this whole thing, there's an assassin who's out to kill Michael by the dude with the cane. And they kill someone else, like within basically the Corleone family. Uh-huh. And they are interrupted because this guy tells Michael, like, this is what just happened. And you pointed this out, and I didn't catch it. But they shot it in a way that when it cut to Kay, it was like the same framing as in the first movie at the end when she was cut off from what was going on.
The last scenes, yeah. Or like, I don't know if it's like exactly the same, but it's very similar to where it's like they bore out their souls and then he has to get up and deal with business and leave her out of it. And right there, she's even like, I've experienced this.
Yeah.
I've experienced this moment over and over in our life, and you just asked for forgiveness and you're doing the same thing to me immediately.
And maybe because if like they hadn't been interrupted, she would have forgiven him and maybe even been like, let's try it again.
Yeah.
Like that, because that's how manipulative this whole thing is. Uh-huh. But because that happened, it's like a rude awakening. Like, oh no, he's not, none of this has changed or will ever change.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Give me a chance to redeem myself, and I will sin no more. He says that to when there's someone that's dead.
Well, the guy that got shot.
Yeah, and that's a good scene. He's just trying so hard for redemption, but he's looking for he's not letting other people or God give him that redemption. He's looking for it in himself.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's the same scene when he gives everything over to Vincent.
Oh yeah,
And maybe that is his last ditch effort of trying to attain that forgiveness.
Oh man, can't you
he's
just
like tired,
yeah,
and broken, and he gives all the power to Vincent. To which I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah, I just don't think that we had enough development to trust Vincent would like take care of the family.
Yeah, because he's very hot-headed, and the interesting thing is in the first movie, if Sonny had never died, he would have become the Don. It was shaping up to be that way.
Yeah,
but he died.
Yeah,
so it was Michael. So in this movie, Vincent, very much like his father, is very hot-headed, but it does. So he becomes a man in power. And then it's like the acting changes a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it is just him fully taking responsibility. I don't know. It doesn't feel quite earned.
It just doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
And can't you just not wait until like fall or winter when we don't have to record with a small film of sweat over us?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Oh boy, I'm sweating. And
Yeah.
it's like 8:00 at night. And it wasn't even that hot of a day. Well, it kind of was. It was still in the 90s. But so Vince becomes the Don, and then we have the opera sequence, right? Does that cover?
Yeah.
Is that everything you wanted to talk about up to the opera?
Yeah.
I love a good opera sequence in a movie.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had known what the opera was, because I'm sure that's significant symbolically.
Well, there is that great moment where in the opera he bites the guy's ear, and it cuts to Vincent, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I did that. I did that to Joey." You know?
Yeah, but there's a lot of religious stuff in the play or the opera that I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, me neither.
But I bet that just adds a layer of like,
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, there's probably examples earlier than this, but there's the great movie The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yeah, The Man Who Knew Too Much. The old Alfred Hitchcock movie, which I actually edited into the Nervous Tick video I made a few years ago. And it's just, I mean, that movie, it's like there's an opera climax. And it's like, I don't know if this is for true, but I think the movie's from the 20s, so it could be, or 30s. It like sets the template for like how every suspenseful opera sequence is going to look.
Okay.
Or actually in that movie, I think it's just an orchestra, but it's a similar kind of thing. And it just has me like, anytime there's an opera thing, I'm just like, oh yeah, baby. Because it's so intense. You're seeing like a drama on stage, and then behind the scenes, like people are trying to kill each other. It's so intense. And I think of Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation. There's the great opera sequence where we first meet Rebecca Ferguson.
Oh, I also am thinking of Inglourious Bastards.
When's there an opera in
There's
that?
not an opera, but they're at an art house.
Yeah. And then even Tenet opens at an opera. It's just such an epic thing to do in a movie. Like, put an opera in there.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. I do think, though, that this sequence is really long. And
it's so long.
And it's very confusing what's going on.
There
is some cool
murdered
stuff.
Who I don't know if I saw them earlier in the movie. And I know that I did. But I'm like, who is this? And why does it matter that they died?
Yeah, and I think, like you said earlier, it's very like blasé about when it switches music cues, and it feels like it does it with no real intent behind it.
That's kind of throughout the whole movie for me.
I just think in the opera scene, it really showcases that, because there's times where it's like playing like a Godfather song on top of the opera music.
Yeah.
Which can work. But then it'll just like the one will fade out, and then it'll keep doing the other, and then it cuts.
It's just jarring.
It was very strange, and the whole time I was like confused about the guy who was killing the Pope.
Yeah.
I was confused about that.
I was confused about 90% of it. It is important to know when Vincent was given all the power, the condition was he has to end things with Mary, to which he does.
Yeah.
And potentially, like, the significant thing about that is, like, 1, they're cousins. It's wrong. 2, apparently it's too dangerous. 3, it is pushing her out of being in that inner circle. She can never be part of that.
Yeah.
I feel like Connie was the closest woman to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's Michael protecting his daughter. But it is like another layer of, like, she is his daughter and she'll never know these things.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of killing and stuff. And
so while all the killing's going on, this guy's trying to assassinate Michael.
yeah.
And he, like, kills other guys in the process. And that was pretty suspenseful.
Yeah,
I think. But
yeah.
intercut with all the other stuff.
I'm not saying this is a bad scene.
No.
It just could have used like one more pass.
Who was the dude with all the money?
So he was like some sort of banker that had to deal with the Vatican. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what they said about him, but they talked about him and they cut to him like once before the opera started.
And so this is all of Vincent's orders.
I think so.
It's just crazy how fast these orders go out.
I know.
But
well, and I think it doesn't help that, like, in Godfather 1, you know, he kills the heads of the 5 families, but we've seen them a couple of times throughout the movie, and we've seen the people that are going to kill them a couple of times throughout the movie, and in this one, it's like the guy with the money, he just kind of shows up, and then, like, the guy who kills him I didn't recognize. And there was it was like, I don't know who's who right now. And
I don't know who's on whose team.
Yeah, and I don't know who's on first. But I think what's on second. No, what's on second, but
who's on first?
No, I know who's on first,
okay.
But yeah, so it is confusing. But you know, it is cool when the guy stabs the guy with his glasses.
Oh, totally.
The
Pope is poisoned. Another guy is shot. And I liked artistically the guy that is in, like, I'm assuming the Vatican or something is shot and he, like, falls down the middle of the stairwell. It looked cool.
He's the guy who made
poetic.
the dealings with Michael at the beginning.
Yeah. But he kept popping out throughout the movie and I'm like, why does it matter?
Yeah.
But that's just because of me not understanding a lot of it. But
it's okay. Most people didn't. Remember, I keep telling you that. Don't be hard on yourself.
Opera ends.
Also, I didn't get that part either.
Opera ends.
The guy is still trying to kill him.
Tony did so good. Everyone's so happy. And they're leaving the theater, and the guy comes to assassinate Michael, pulls the trigger, and
shoots Michael in the shoulder.
And Mary in the chest.
And Mary dies pretty quickly.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
But I think it was a very interesting development.
Yeah. And Vincent, like, just, they grab the guy, like, his guys grab him, and they're, like, gonna hold him, and Vincent just immediately kills the guy. Which was a good move, I think. And so...
just, like, a harrowing scene of all these people screaming in grief and shock, and especially Al Pacino right here. That was emotional. Him screaming, and it was silent.
Yeah, the first scream is they cut the sound, and then the second scream
I just gotta think
that
on that day of filming, that's the only thing he did that day because it was that emotionally taxing.
Yeah,
because it looked exhausting.
Yeah,
he really convinced me.
No, I mean it's great. It's a great scene. And then, like, it isn't the next scene him dying. It was pretty funny too, just for you audience members. I just had to say, Jordan was like, I don't know what it was, but
I was trying to look up Sofia Coppola.
She's trying to look up Sofia Coppola, and I knew
related.
that the movie was going to end soon. I remembered that much, like it was going to end soon, and then it cuts to, him, and I can see out of the corner of my eye that Jordan's still on her phone, just looking straight down, and I'm like,
the IMDb wasn't loading,
and I'm like, Jordan, look, and you're like, sorry. And then you put your phone down, and like the next second, Michael keels over and dies. And I was like, you almost missed the death of Michael Corleone.
What would this have all been about?
You were off your phone the whole movie, and you were like, now's a good time.
So here's the question.
Okay.
Him dying alone.
Yes.
What does that say about the mafia?
Well, he's out.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that's my reading. You could probably say, like, maybe Connie's in the other room. I don't know.
But he still died alone.
But I think
his father didn't even die alone.
No.
He had his grandson there.
He
wasn't
family.
even surrounded. Yeah. So he was surrounded by no one. So he the first beginning of the movie, in the first movie, he takes up the mantle of the Corleone family almost by like, it's his duty to do it. It doesn't matter if he wanted to or not. And then he leads this like potentially, it's not selfless, but like selfless life that's only dedicated to this family. And it cost him his family. So basically like he lived a life lived only for others. Obviously not. He had a lot of issues.
He didn't live for others at all. He lived completely for himself.
But I think he thinks that he did.
Oh, he thinks he did, yeah.
Until the end of his life when he was like, what have I done with my life?
Yeah.
And then he died alone.
Yeah. And I can imagine that, like, like with Vito, he did, even though he was doing bad things, he always prioritized family first.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael said that he did, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He acted like he did, but he never prioritized family first. So you got to imagine, Mary's laying there dead. Tony's never going to talk to him again. Kay's never going to talk to him again. Who knows about the rest of the family, but they're done with him. Yeah. He's done enough.
Yeah, basically, if he was to give up his power, which is what Vito did,
yeah,
that meant that he should have lived out the rest of his days surrounded by his family.
Yeah. And that doesn't happen, and I think what's really thinking back on the second movie as we see the rise of Vito corresponding with the rise of Michael, we see how much, again, as much as Vito is a bad guy, like he's doing wrong things, he is always like he's there for the birth of his son, and he is like trying to help others, and it's just. He happens to be a criminal. Whereas like Michael, is covering his butt, fleeing to Cuba. He's like ruling with fear and power. And Vito always ruled with love and respect.
Well, that's the interesting thing with Vito, because it all was born out of a like you're saying, love and respect, and like almost like an altruistic potential thing. Like no one, because it was, the second movie was so heavily about Italian immigrants, obviously. That it was like, okay, well, this system in America is not looking out for us, so we need to look out for each other.
Yeah,
and that's where that all was born, with that love and respect thing. Because he also was seeing that the fear was not working, and it would never work. But with Mike, by the time it became Michael's turn, that was so lost. It was like things had changed almost too much.
Yeah,
because it's crime. And it's wrong.
And you got to think that like. I lost it completely, but that's okay.
I'm about to lose my voice, I think.
But yeah, I mean, these are great movies.
They're great movies.
And I think this movie's really good. I think this is like, the other two movies are like 10 out of 10s, and this is like an easy 7 out of 10.
Okay.
And I could be convinced, like, if someone was like, oh, no, this one's an 8, I'd be like, that's cool that you think it's an 8. And if you're like, no, it's a 6, I'm like, that's cool. I think much lower, you're not giving it enough credit.
Talking through it made me like it more.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely, I mean, at some point in our lives, I'm not thinking anytime soon, we should definitely try and watch that edit, because I'm very curious about that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do a little, like 10-minute episode where we could say, oh, guys, it's actually good. Or, so let's rank them. I think.
Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3.
Wow, the first one is your least?
No, best to least. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I agree. But the more I think about, I've been stewing on 2 a lot. It's like, it's very close for me.
Yeah.
But 1, as much as our podcast as sequels exist, or we exist to prove people wrong when they say sequels are never better than the originals, there's just something about that first movie that is just like unmatched in cinema.
I have been thinking about the second movie too, and thinking about how good it is,
Yeah,
especially the Vito stuff.
I know. I also want to watch the cut they did for TV where it's all chronological and see like how that kind of changes how you view it, you know? So maybe it'd be fun to watch that and then watch the coda, the re-edit. That's what I'm going to do next time. So thank you for listening. Go to patreon.com/Micah McCaw and download this month's MPU, the sequel episode on Kill Bill Volume 1.
Have we mentioned what our next series is?
I don't think we have. But let's keep them waiting just a moment longer. So go do that. And just another reminder, once we get to 50 patrons, we're going to do an extra podcast. So we'll have two Patreon podcasts a month, and that extra one, we're going to do all the Pixar movies that we haven't already covered on our Patreon and on this main feed. So let's get to 50. We're getting there. We're getting closer all the time. And then tell them what our next series is.
Fear Street.
Netflix's Fear Street.
Netflix's Fear Street. So we said, it has to be theatrical releases, but you got to listen to the first episode to talk about why we chose to cover this series.
Yeah. And we've actually recorded 2 of them already. We just have to record the last one.
Yep.
And it's
quite the change of pace.
It's been very interesting.
We can't wait for Halloween.
Yes. But we are watching them in August, so it doesn't feel like we're even close to Halloween yet.
It does to me.
And then we're going to follow it up with another scary series.
You'll never guess.
So it's 7...
Although you probably will as soon as you listen to Fear Street 1984.
94.
1994.
But yeah, so that's 7 movies in a row of scariness. So we'll see you next time. Oh, and leave us a review, please.
Yeah.